Hello and welcome to this revival of the Caffeine Chronicles, where I enjoy a cup of coffee and a chat with interesting people. And today I'm joined by Elona Woods, who's an international psychic medium, astrologer, homeopath, car healer, Reiki master, psychometrist, and she's the author of the book The Road to Sovereignty. She's a wonderful podcast also called The Arcane Mystic, and details of that I'll put in the description for you to take a look after the episode. Now, I met Elona for the first time recently in Glastonbury in a pub called the Georgian Pilgrim. It was a magical place, and we were sat there with a group of like-minded people, and the conversation and merriment were flowing, and the food was fantastic. And I hit it off immediately with Elona, and so I'm delighted to have her on the channel. So welcome, Elona. It's good to have you here.
Hey Sarah, it's lovely to see you again. It was honestly such a wonderful evening. That evening was to meet you and other like minds. And you just walked in and the energy was just, yeah, you've arrived. So yeah, it was great.
It was great. And today with Elona, we're going to talk about homeopathy. Now, I thought this would be a great subject to talk about. As you know, we seem to be witnessing the breakdown of reality, and more people are turning away from big pharma, and they've lost their trust of allopathic medicine, especially in the light of a certain rollout and the repercussions of that product over the last few years. And lots of people are going back to the old ways. And as Elona is a professional homeopath with her own practice, I thought she would be an excellent guest to tell us all about this holistic module and how we can take some of our power back, taking control of our health from a more holistic point of view. Now, Elona, you have a lot of strings to your bow with tarot astrology. You're sensitive to spirit like myself, and you're a psychic medium, an author, and all that. So, what drew you into homeopathy? Was it a natural inclination towards healing based on your spirituality?
No, my last son got really sick. And before that, I actually got sick. I did a gut cleanse and it was by somebody online that wasn't trained or anything, basically like a TikTok video when I was in my new age cage phase. And I did this and I got really, really ill. So I fasted for a few months and then broke the fast really quickly. And all of a sudden, my body just felt really ill. I went to the doctors and they were telling me, do you know what? This is all in your mind. There's something not quite right with you. It's all in your head. And I was like, okay, it's not all in my mind. And I was talking to a client that I usually spoke to, and I said to her, I just don't feel right. I really, really don't feel right. And I don't know what to do. And she said, go to a homeopath. And I was like, okay, fine. And I'd seen homeopathy in my early 20s when I was into UFOs and all of the rest of it, looking for something else to save me. But I lost everything at that point and wasn't really able to look at it properly and go into it. So I've gone to see this homeopath and she's put my hand on a scanner, which I do now, I do scans. It's looked at all the way through my body and I was grumpy. I went in there, I was proper like, they were 5 minutes late and I was in a grump state. I was starving. I felt all sorts of different emotions and feelings. And she said to me, oh, you've got parasites. I was like, you what? And she's like, yeah, you got parasites. I was quite fascinated by the whole thing that I asked her to write down, what it was, maybe course or whatever I could look into. Because I thought it'd be great to add something else to what it is that I was doing. And then my bill was interesting. And then she gave me 4 pouches of powder. And I was like, what am I supposed to do with these? Because you go to the doctor and you get a prescription and you take either 3 tablets a day or maybe twice a day. I've got a powder to take once a week. And I thought, is this woman okay? And I was on my way to Santorini not long after that point. So anyway, in between all of that, I worked at a yoga festival and my son, my last one, got really, really ill. And he ended up having asthma attacks and we was in hospital every 2 weeks and it got really worrying. But before that, the first time that it happened, I said to him, son, look, you're really ill. I've got to take you to a doctor. He was about 3. And he just got up and he looked at me wide-eyed. And he said to me, why would you take me to a doctor when in our last lifetime you were an amazing healer? Have you forgotten who you are? And I was just astounded. I didn't say anything. So I just kind of sat there, didn't take him, just like left him over there because he's always said some quite strange things. Gone off to Santorini. And he was better by that point because I'd used herbs and stuff. I had knowledge in that area. And I went to the top of, I think it was Hera. And up there was loads of dynasties of ancient sites. So we've got, I think there was Apollo up there. There was just all sorts of different gods and goddesses from different dynasties. And my kids were at a Steiner school, so they told me about all the weird and the wonderful. And as I was stood up there, I just said, look, if there's anything that I'm meant to be doing now that's going to add to my career, or not even add to my career, but just add to the wisdom that I already have, or something that can help people in a different way, show me what I'm supposed to be doing because I feel lost. And I went back down, went back to the hotel, went to pick up my book because it was time to pack, and that bit of paper fell out. That was from the homeopath, and it said homeopathy, and of course, my name.
Wow. So there was definitely your message had been answered. Wow, that's quite poignant. And the rest is
And
history. Did you go
yeah,
back
my
and
son,
get straight into that, or did you think about it for a while, or was you under no
no,
circumstances in any doubt?
because when before I went to figure out where to go, I went to go and have a look at the course after I got back from that holiday. I went in on the Monday and it started on the Wednesday, and I had to find childcare on the Tuesday, and everything just slotted in together. Just happened, and that was it.
Yeah, it was for you. And some of the best plans work out like that, where you don't have time to think about it, where it's just all green lights and you go straight in and off you go. You hit the ground running. That's
Yeah.
fantastic. It's fantastic. And for those of us that might not be familiar with the practice of homeopathy, can you just tell us a bit about what it is and how it differs from conventional medicine?
Homeopathy is based on the simillimum, like yours like. Come to me, you've been stung by a bee. I will give you a remedy that has been maybe made by the bee. Okay, so it could be something like apis. And what this remedy would do is if you came in with a stinging eye and it was swollen, that your symptoms have the affinity to that remedy. So the stronger force of the remedy dries out the weaker force of what is going on a physical level. And that's one way of working with it. So with my son, he was in hospital every 2 weeks. And after I was flabbergasted by what he said, I worked with remedies that were similar to his symptoms. And now we don't very rarely go back. I haven't been back to a hospital with him in 3 years, I think it is. And we don't really need to use conventional methods because now we've got ways of working with it that work for his body. So homeopathy really is a system of medicine that works on an individual basis for each person, and the simillimum is like yours like.
Right. So it's like showing the body a mirror, is it, to show it what's wrong with it and to say, this is what's wrong and this is how you're going to heal yourself by taking something from that ailment that's caused
Yeah,
that ailment to heal them. So I suppose you could, another good analogy would be if you was an anxious person suffering from a lot of anxiety, then you could perhaps use a drop of caffeine to calm that, to use that to help that person calm down. Is that how it works?
yeah. And that would also help as well if somebody was having insomnia. If they couldn't sleep, you may take a dose of coffee, especially if you drink lots of coffee in the daytime. Take one dose at night time, and that would help you to potentially sleep. But absolutely, yeah,
Right. So when you say take a dose, you don't mean have a cup of coffee. What do you mean? Because it's diluted to the nth degree, isn't it?
yeah. So, for instance, if I had a granule of coffee right now and I had like a Bunsen burner tube, I'd put that granule of coffee in that Bunsen burner tube and add some water, and I would bang it. So you'd succuss, almost banging 30 times. There's your remedy.
And you would just take that on the tongue, or
You can take it under the tongue. That's the way that the remedies work. You can take it under the tongue. There's lots of different ways. So you've got liquid potencies that work on quite a gentle level. You have got the 30 Cs, which normally most people take and what the remedy kits are based on. You can go higher because then the 30s work mainly on the physical. The higher the potency, the more you're working on the mental. The further you go, you're working on the spirit.
right? Well, many years ago, I studied quite a few holistic therapies. And for me, studying some of those subjects have been some of the most self empowering things that I've ever done for myself. Because although I don't provide them as a service now, I do still use them on myself and on my family and pets. And two that spring to mind that I went on courses for were aromatherapy and color therapy. Now, aromatherapy is for the emotions through smell, which directly affects the limbic system, which is like the brain's emotional center. And then we've got color therapy, which influences the mood and energy levels, usually through visual stimulation. And I use a lot of color therapy. Believe it or not, I'm wearing black, but when I'm not on camera, if I'm in a certain mood, I'll choose a color to counteract that mood. But do you use any other holistic therapies to complement the homeopathy when you're doing a consultation or a treatment?
Flower essences, because sometimes if you homeopathy is not just for physical ailments. You can come, as you said, with anxiety. It could be somebody that's got PTSD, suffers low moods, that has just left somebody that's had somebody that's died. And you work with the remedy that they are given. If you're working with somebody that's suffered extreme trauma, sometimes in order to really heal what you've been through, you've got to refeel it to heal it. This is where the flower essences come in, and they can work really well because they can work on the mental, emotional symptoms as they work on the etheric body. Other things that people may use in conjunction could be acupuncture. They can use aromatherapy. There's herbs as well. I also work with a lot of herbs and sell blends that work on detox in the body as well. Because I find that a lot of symptoms that people have are exasperated by parasites. And it's good to kind of clear the body of parasites while working with homeopathy and do that on a full moon because that's when they hatch. But there's lots of different ways that you can work with homeopathy. It's not for me just a one size fits all. I could be working with it and using flower essences in conjunction with something, but you could be taking it and find that maybe sound frequencies work really well or exercise and massage. So it's really a system of working with oneself that aligns with, what makes them feel like their favorite self.
So you talk about parasites there. You've mentioned those twice. How do people get an infestation of parasites? You say it's very common. How does that happen? Is that spiritual parasites or is that actual parasites within the gut?
Maybe both.
Right.
Without, because I think that they're parasites within the gut. But in my book, there was one parasite that I spoke about in my podcast with Thomas, and it was able to override the system, the mental capacity of a human, and then impart its own thoughts onto that human. It can also do that with cordyceps, with ants. There's lots of different ways that these things within the gut work. And I often think to myself that if we've got an ability within ourselves to connect up to something that's divine, do we also have an ability? What is it that connects us to something that may not be? And people look out there, could it be within? And could the way that these things work be within the gut system? Because that is the fourth brain. And most people are so unaware of themselves. So yeah, I do think that an infestation of those parasites could have spiritual connotations as well. But how do people know that they've got them? You can have gut issues, skin issues. There's I researched also for my book different disease states that people have. Every single one of them had parasites behind them, and it is thought that up to 90% of the population have them and they don't even know it.
Wow. How do they pick them up? Do they pick them up through food or do they pick them up through dubious practices that they're not aware of or too much anxiety? If you have a spiritual parasite, is that a different way of removing that than removing actual parasites that reside in the gut?
No, because this is what I personally think. It doesn't mean that I'm right. I think that parasites are a frequency match to unhealed emotions. And that could be ancestral on a genetic level. So people that have moved away from their truths. And it could also be on an emotional level for situations that have happened. You think about it, when people get really sad and they get really low, what's the first thing that they do? They normally go for really bad foods. If you're eating processed foods that have got low levels of life force within them, they can't be broken down within the body, so it becomes a haven for parasites. Going back to my Substack that I wrote about Victor Schauberger and water, when water was allowed to flow in its natural habitat and its natural state, it created a magical charge that eliminated parasites. It wasn't a haven for parasites to grow. Since water has been forced into pipes, it has lost its magical charge and has become a haven for parasites. So, one way, if you look at water that people are drinking now, there's loads of it online that you can have a look at. There's parasites all the way through it. Yes, they do grow on the food because we have moved away from nature. And in that moving away from nature, our gut systems at a certain point had a biodiversity that was in accordance with how we were living in nature because we are nature. When we moved away from that and we've come to towns and we've also come to cities, our gut microbiome has changed, but whatever way it has changed hasn't been in a way that is beneficial to humans. I think that it has actually slowed us down. And the other thing with parasites is parasites and heavy metals go hand in hand. And if you look at the main heavy metals that are causing problems, you can link them to the planets in alchemy. So that good aspects of the planets give you really great opportunities. Bad aspects of the planets don't. Couple that with parasites, who's in charge?
Yeah, not us. So that's actually very interesting because you mentioned earlier that you had a gut issue and you went to see a homeopath and you discovered it was parasites. It's almost like you had to have that in order to discover all this, to do homeopathy yourself, and then to be able to heal other people. So it's actually just illuminates what you've just said, that sometimes you have to re-feel it to heal it.
Yeah. And it was a big one because my mental health went out the window. I was angry, grumpy, in the system, had to work, had to get this done. It was just like I could feel that my center just wasn't, I wasn't aligned with that part of myself. And this is why now I do different bits in the morning just to make sure that I'm centered. And I will do cleanses all the time. If my mood's out, like I was a bit grumpy, around the full moon, because it was a full moon in Aries, and Aries are like, they can get quite angry. So I took some nuts vomica, which works on the liver. And what that did is that it just completely slowed me down a bit and allowed me to actually stand back and think, hang on a minute, what's going on here? Why were you feeling so agitated? But that remedy allowed me space for self-reflection. Took it for a few days and I was fine.
Right as rain. Elona and I are rediscovering our ancestral paths, and I know that ancestral knowledge is an important part of healing, and even the old wives' tales are ancestral wisdom. Lots of people are going back to herbs for medicine. So, have you got any clients, or have you had any clients whose illnesses were linked to ancestral trauma? And if so, then how can homeopathy help to release that?
That's an interesting one because we have medicines that we use for miasms, which we label as genetic pollutions. So if we have a look at that, the one that's running riot today at the moment is cancer. And one of the nosodes is called carcinosin. And that is where people spread themselves too thinly. They go to work even though they don't really want to. They get up and they have to be there for people and they're yes people. They lose parts of themselves. So it's like their soul shards are being spread all over the place. And the one person that they do not honor or are true to is themselves. And what this remedy does is it brings all the broken pieces back together. And it's especially good for people that have had cancer cases within the family. Then we've got the tubercular miasm ancestrally. So this is for people that would have been displaced. So people that have been moved. So you've got people that were moved from Africa to the Caribbean. You've got people in Ireland that had to move. You've got people who've been displaced all over the world. And these are normally the restless ones that are quite unhappy with the way that life is. They don't stay in relationships for very long. They change their jobs quite frequently. They may like smoked foods. And this is the interesting thing about homeopathy. There's always a mental picture that goes alongside it. It's not just looking, oh my goodness, his foot hurts. We're going to treat the foot. What's going on in your mind? What are you feeling? What are you dreaming about? What are you eating? So the tubercular miasm On a spiritual level, what that does is shows you where you're wasting your true expression, where you're not, aligning with your talents that sits there. And the people that normally have this can get throat affinities, or they can have problems with coughs, pneumonia, broncho. It's always around the kind of throat area. Then we have got syphilinum, which are discussed again in another podcast, and this one is the most destructive one. And this is the one, the parasite that was like a bacteria that goes within the gut system. And once it's in there, it can override the host system way of thinking, and it gets you to do things in the way that it wants. But the outcome of this is total destruction. And syphilitic periods are like World War One and World War Two. If we have a look around that period, syphilis was through the roof, but it's risen again in our time now, and the world is a bit wild, as you well know. Then we've got the Medorhinum. So this is the psychotic, but psychotic not as in mental health. They're not balanced. So these are your people that are like, whoa, have you met those kind of people that are new agey that talk to them? And every other sentence, there's a breath. So they're the kind of slowed down, they may have certain eating habits and they're not within alignment or balance within themselves. They're like way or over spiritual kind of thing. The other side of this is those that are teetotal Monday to Friday. And then when Saturday, Sunday comes, they are drinking out your cabinet because they've got no balance in their lives. These people normally suffer from overgrowths, warts, polyps. This was passed down through ancestors that had untreated gonorrhea. Most of these are sexually transmitted diseases. Syphilis, the syphilitic myome was untreated syphilis. And the other one that we work with is Sora, which is a remedy called Serinum. This goes back to the skin problems. So people might have an itch, a skin itch, eczema, psoriasis, those kind of things. But really, on a mental, emotional level, they may have an itch to do better. And so it manifests within the body as somebody that feels suppressed, that can't do better. They may have gut problems. And these are ancestral problems that are still happening now. And this is why, because they weren't treated on a mental, emotional, or physical level, we are still having children that have these maladies. The other thing as well with parasites is that any child that is born has a predisposition to have ancestral parasites that have passed down through the line. And these remedies can help with enabling the children that are born in the future to not have the same kind of mental, emotional symptoms and maybe even physical moving forwards. So yeah, they do deal with genetic problems.
So it kind of short circuits the flow of that DNA or information coming through and being passed on to the next generation and puts a stop to it.
But that will take a few generations to be able to do that. Because we were asked a question, do you think that it could change gene expression? Maybe it could. I do feel that there's definitely something there. And a good book to read on that is Homeopathy and the Human Evolution by Martin Miles. Absolutely fantastic book that really talks about the way that the human spirit works and how homeopathy may be beneficial.
Wow, so it's almost like a generational hexing almost. Very,
Yeah.
very similar. Or maybe
Yeah.
that's what it is, but we know it is unhealed ancestral trauma that can be fixed over a period of generations.
Yeah. But
Wow.
they all come with mental, emotional. So when the reason why would we use them or why did they look for them is because homeopaths were using the normal, say, 100 remedies at that time, and they get so far with it, but just wouldn't heal. So they were like, what could be causing this? Because we've done everything we can. And then all of a sudden they were like, what if there's been something passed down that we've missed? And this is where they found the five main problems. And they reckon in the end, we would go from syphilis, which is the most destructive, back to sora, which is one of the oldest diseases, which is the skin itch. And then from that point, people would probably more work on an etheric body level
Mhm.
because they would be back in alignment with themselves.
It does make you wonder if syphilis is somehow related to Wetiko on a spiritual level, and that
Hmm.
is another symptom of it, but through the mind, because it affects
Yeah.
mind, body, and spirit. So in the body, it manifests itself as all the symptoms that you get with syphilis, but in the mind, or holistically, it can present itself as the Wetiko mind virus.
Neurosyphilis is potentially what that could be. And the other interesting thing about syphilis is when people feel like they've got attachments, they normally feel that it's in the spine. That's one of the places that it goes.
Wow, that's creepy stuff.
The other side of that syphilis is the genius. So I wonder what that's blocking and what it's aligning you with, because that's my question with it. It's everything is sentient. What does that link back to? What do these parasites link back to? I don't know.
Are they related in some way to the spiritual force, perhaps, that's inhabiting this earth and leading us all down that way, the wrong
Yeah,
way?
yeah.
I
When I
don't
speak about,
know.
look, I just put out the planet of possibilities to have a look. What could this possibly be? And I think we've all got a general idea of what this could be. But for people that are lost and don't really know how to find their way or where to start within themselves, homeopathy is a really great way to start unlocking parts of self that you never knew existed. It's like stripping the layers off of an onion, and it takes you back to the core center of who you always were.
Yeah, I like the analogy of peeling an onion because that's how, when I was doing my holistic therapy studies, that was how we kind of explained the healing crisis. So each time you go and have a treatment, you peel a layer of the onion away so something else rises to the surface, and eventually things have to get so bad before they get better. So you have what's known as a healing crisis or a detox, if you like. And I think the onion analogy kind of illustrates that really well.
Yeah. And we still use essential oils. I love them. We use them to sleep to protect our bodies. A really good homeopathic remedy for people that have night terrors or children is actually stramonium, datura, which they would take for hallucinations and visuals in Mexico. But taken in a homeopathic potency, it stops children from having night terrors.
Right. Well, I was reading your website and it's very interesting and informative. And I came across a treatment that you offer, which is called biocommunication. So, what is that, and what can I expect if I came to you for a biocommunication scan?
There's two ways that can work. That can be done in person or for a person with a non-Mac laptop. You put your hand on the scanner, and what it does is that the galvanic skin responses, it reads your energy system. It gives you a rundown of all of your organs, of their capacity, their functions, and how they're working. And before I purchased this, I called a couple of people into my office that I knew had diabetes or I knew had pathology. And when I put them on there, those organs did flag, and then I went for it. And it will show you the heavy metals that you've got in your system, parasites, um, also what's blocking your sleep, vitamins and minerals that you're lacking. It also goes into essential oils. It can work with homeopathic remedies, but I'm a homeopath, so I work with that myself. Foods that can bring your energy system up, or maybe foods that you can drop out for a bit, just to help bring you back into balance. It basically looks at all of you. It even looks at your chakra function and how that's working. And the reason why I like doing these is because when somebody has a scan, it gives them the opportunity to have a look at what's going on within their body, and it gives them the power back to say, actually, well, these are the different ways that I'd like to work. And it gives you a list of different ways that may be beneficial for you. And then you can go off and do whatever it is that you want to do. So you can use the scan in conjunction with homeopathy or herbalism, but then people may have other ways that they want to work with it, but at least they've got a snapshot of what's going on within them.
Right. And do you use auric readings in the practice as well to help you with sort of intuit or to guide your treatment? Do you pick up on people's auras where there might be holes or broken areas when you're doing this bio?
You can feel it. You just learn how to
Yeah.
kind of read people's energies and just feel them when you're working in a one-on-one and when you've got permission to be able to do that. My other cheat code as well that I do have is I actually have an aura machine. So it does tell you what color your aura is and all the rest of it. Has a picture of you. You can see everything that's going on within your biofield. But yeah, I can actually see what is going on with people on that level and where they may have, where they may have energy leaks.
Right. Yeah, I used to pick up on people's auras when I was doing some holistic therapies, but that was because when I'm sure yourself, you go into kind of an alpha state when you're doing it. You're very relaxed when you're doing the healing. So you could pick up on certain people's auras. It's not something that I would go out and be able to do. You have to be in a certain frame of mind or a certain consciousness. So it is an interesting when you see little holes or little black areas and you think, you've got a problem there or there's an issue here. And then you can say, do you have a problem with your knee? Yeah, yeah. How did you know that? Oh, there's just some blackness around the aura, around that part of the leg, or there's a little hole there that I can see. And you can also, I also used to use a pendulum to detect where there was issues in the auric field as well. But I think we've come a long way further than that. Now we can use, like you say, you have a machine.
I would never discredit using the pendulum. I would never discredit using your gifts in the way that you use them, because the one thing I love about homeopathy is that there's so many diverse homeopaths out there. I don't really like using the term healer because for me, there are lots of healers and I'm not discrediting any of them. What I love with homeopathy is that you would go to a practitioner or you may even have a problem at home. We could take the same remedy and have completely different outcomes. And the reason why is because when we take the remedy, it assimilates within our bodies and it goes to exactly where it's needed to go. Some people like the pendulums and they like it when somebody reads their field and work in that way. So that works for certain people. Others like have more visual and they want to see what's going on some sort of basis coming through to their email address, or maybe they're going through a healing crisis. And the other side of it that they want is to be able to have a look maybe in 6 months to see comparatively where they are. And the other thing that this brings up as well, and I've done this with my kids when they've been quite out of sorts or not felt 100%, it brings up suppressed emotions, this machine does. So when it comes up with my kids, I'm like, oh, what are you feeling guilty about? Mom, this is what I'll get. And it could be that one of them missed work and it caused problems or did something. Then I'll give them a remedy to work on that guilt. And it doesn't suppress the guilt. What it does is it allows you to express so that it doesn't sit within your body anymore as an energy leak.
Yeah, that's really important because a lot of people suppress the feelings, don't they? Because they don't want to appear weak. So if they're upset or they, because you can't beat a good cry every now and again as a release. And a lot of, especially men, they kind of push that down because they want to appear strong, or even women, want to be a martyr and they want to keep going and nothing's going to stop them. And I think if you don't let those emotions come out somehow, then they've got nowhere to go. They're going to stagnate within the body, and that's going to manifest in all kinds of disease and problems along the line. Somewhere along the line, you're going to suffer.
Yeah, you do. And for those men out there that don't cry, vulnerability is a superpower. It really does help you. And nature and mule's a really good remedy. And the analogy behind that is no man is an island. The other thing as well with the suppression, it really makes the miasms worse. And I think that when you clear the miasms, this is what's happened within my kind of healing journey, is that you start uncovering ancestral, not powers, but I would say memories. Because I think that these ancestral pollutions that are there are blocking maybe things that we could do back then that we've forgotten how to do now. Somehow we just remember these things. So it's really good to be able to feel your emotions, to be able to understand the subtle energies that's going on around you. And for the women that, are all macho and out there, um, gut problems, gut issues, maybe a dose of lycopodium, there's different ways that you can work with homeopathy. There's different ways you can work with it in conjunction with other modalities, but healing is really healing. And there's nothing wrong with crying, with being emotional, with letting things out. Nothing wrong with it at all.
Not at all. And it's also important not to let people invalidate your feelings as well, because that's just the same as another version of suppressing them. Don't let somebody else suppress your feelings by allowing them to invalidate them. You should feel them, let them wash over you, let them come and let them go. Because if
And
it's better out than in.
yeah,
Yeah.
this is it. And sometimes what we need is just maybe what we're feeling, because there's different layers of consciousness and different dimensional areas of that. we've got the astral realm, we've also got the etheric realm. And there's different homeopathy, I think, works on all of them. But for those that maybe just be out of alignment slightly, flower essences can really help with that. And it is knowing when you're feeling these emotions. This is why I do the work in the morning, just to feel what I'm feeling in my body, just to help bring me back to center, so that I'm not getting up and going out within the day with something that could have been sorted out before and cause bigger problems later on somewhere down the line.
Yeah, carrying emotional baggage. Yeah, which is essentially what you do if you suppress things.
Hard work. It's
Yeah.
not fun. I do not recommend, carrying that kind of stuff around when you can go into that and really feel what's going on within you. You can face that part of yourself. And I don't believe in we get rid of anything. We build awareness of something that sits there, and we either have the choice to focus our energy on that or point it towards something else. But it's just, for me, it's all about coming back to the center of everything.
Shadow work, in effect.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that homeopathy is shadow work of one of the highest orders, really.
So I want to finish up by asking you, obviously, homeopathy comes, well, I'm sure it comes with a lot of naysayers and skeptics and things like that, as they all do. So, what would you say is the most common misconceptions from people about homeopathy? And how would you like to set it straight?
Placebo. It's just placebo, or it's a pseudoscience. Yes, people look at, I think that anything that they say is pseudo now, I'm more inclined to listen to than anything that they say is factual. Yeah, so for me, with that, do I need to prove that homeopathy works? Not at all. I think that medicine speaks for itself. And if you've had an experience with it where you didn't feel that it worked, find yourself another homeopath. And I would recommend at least giving 3 months try to see what happens with it. Um, Also, as well, with regards to this, it works on different people in different ways. It depends on where you are within your journey, what it is that you're looking for, how long you've been sick for. If you've been sick for years and years, it's not going to turn things in overnight. And it's a longer way to work. Like with my son, when he had his asthmatic problems and he had eczema and hay fever, you had to treat the different layers as they came up. And I just thought this has just taken forever. I thought it was taking quite a long time because it really took me around 6 months before I started seeing the results that I would like to have seen. But the long-term results have been absolutely amazing. So with the regards to homeopathy, if you're coming into it looking for a quick fix scheme, it can work on acute situations very well. And acute is things like flu, it could be a bite or a sting. But if you've got more longer term problems, then it is something that would need a bit more time. And listen to your spirit. If it's for you, then great. And if it's not, then that's okay. Find your medicine.
I think the placebo effect is a perfect example of mind over matter because, if you're given a medicine, someone's given a medicine and somebody's just given some saline, and the person with the saline water gets better because they think they've been given the medicine, then isn't that the power of the mind, which shows that it's all a mindset and you can use the mind to help heal yourself?
Yeah. And what homeopathy does is it helps you have a change of perspective. That's where the real healing is. Because when you can see where you're thinking certain things that are just not great for you, why would you want to think them anymore? But how would you know what you were thinking that was wrong if you'd always been thinking that way?
Yeah.
And one thing it showed me was not the bits that I could see that I knew that needed work on, it's bits I couldn't see. And that's where the game changer came in. And some parts of that was brutal. This is not a walk in the park. It's like shadow work. It's not, you're going to be levitating, meditating on top of a hill. This is a real looking at yourself without anybody judging you, because I don't think that there's anybody out there that can judge you harsher than you judge yourself. Yeah, and once you made peace with those parts of yourself and you've integrated that, you've got the chance then to fill it with something else or just keep that space, empty space, and really get into a place of cultivating more awareness. And that's what homeopathy has helped me to do. And I've been taking it for years, and so have my kids. That's all they really know now. Whenever they get sick, they're like birds. They just come over and open their mouth and say, Mum, I need a remedy. And I'm like, fine, here we go. But when I take remedies now, the one thing that it does is it always brings me back to that centralized point. Whereas when I first started, it would show me, okay, this is where things were wrong, and I'd fix that bit or strip the layer off, and then another layer would come up. But now I don't take it as much as I used to. But when I do, it brings me straight back to the center.
And is that because you know yourself better now?
I
Know
know my
thyself.
Yeah, and I know what makes me happy. I know what my boundaries are. I know when I need a psychic firewall. I know the kind of people that I can be around and who I feel comfortable with. I don't really go out. So for to come out and spend time with you guys, for me, it blew my mind. I felt over the moon and just overwhelmed. And I went home, I was on a high. I felt really happy. And it was because I allowed myself to come to a space within me where I met people like you that I only dreamed of before.
Yes, on that night, I have to admit, before we arrived, I was very, very nervous and feeling a bit overwhelmed because I'm not great in big groups of people, unless it's groups of like-minded people, and then I'm great. This the extrovert comes out then. But until you know what you're walking into, I'm always very careful. And the minute I walked through the door and said hello to everybody, I just thought, yes, I'm home. Get the beers in, I'm home, and I love it. It's wonderful, and it was a fan. And you just let yourself, the real you comes to the surface, and it was great. Everybody was being themselves.
It's freedom. And this is the thing, I think that homeopathy has allowed me the freedom to be who I am. And this is just my way of doing it. It doesn't mean that it will be everybody's way. And it's allowed me to see where I was getting drawn out in certain situations, energetically, or where something was trying to maybe pull me out of a place of alignment. And now I just pivot and swerve and just don't engage with certain things anymore. And it feels really good. And I feel like the favorite version of myself. And I just want to stay here.
That's lovely, and I think that's a great place to end it, and I wanna thank you for coming on, Elona. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk with you, and about the importance of homeopathy, and also looking at treating the cause rather than just masking the symptoms, and I really hope we can chat again in the future. So thank you so much for giving up some of your precious time to come and talk to us. And just to finish, can you let people know where they can find you, where they can book a consultation if they want to, or a reading with you? And most importantly, where they can buy your book.
So I've got a course at the moment. It's a low cost course actually, because I've got so many people getting in contact with me that don't know how to use homeopathy. 'Cause for me, like I said, it was a minefield with these four powders or just different remedies. So that can be found on my website at www.elonawoodshomeopathy.com. Consultations can be booked there. I also have a shop. My book can be bought from there. um, the shop also has herbal remedies on there that work for gut in lots of different areas. You can also buy herbal kits for the winter. Readings you can book on there as well. Send you the link for that website, www.elonawoods.com. And I'm on Instagram as well. And I am also on Facebook. So I'm in quite a few places, but I'm findable.
Great stuff. Thank you, Ilona. And thanks to you guys for joining us. And I really hope that you enjoyed the chat. And I will see you all soon on the next episode of the Caffeine Chronicles.
You, Sarah. Sarah.
Ginger fairies.